easy for you now. You got 2 minutes of my time, and I don't really break through.
We're going to cover job interview tips, tech futures, and also, of course, you know, what a future of jobs looks like in engineering and IT. So to get us started today, we're going to intro our first round of panelists and speakers. We have with us, we've got Jeff, we have Mike, we have Ant, Brian, and Harini. Amazing to have you all with us today. So I will go through one by one and let you all introduce yourselves. Firstly, I'll start with Jeff. He's the CIO, or previously was, down at Melbourne Water. So he's had an incredible career. Maybe Jeff, if you want to just do a little brief intro on how you got into technology and IT.
Thanks, Jessica, and hello to everyone on the call. My introduction to IT was actually with my Year 10 maths teacher, who was studying computing at Monash. And during that year, he gave us the opportunity to write little, like formulaic little programs and run them on the Monash computer. And that was really my introduction to computing. I really hadn't had any exposure to it. But I went through and did Year 11 and Year 12, and then I was looking at my undergraduate degree, and I decided that I think IT's got some growth in it. So I did a Bachelor of Business with a major in IT, and that was really my introduction.
We also have with us Michael Temenos. He's Head of Software Engineering over at Moula. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into engineering or IT in this field and space?
Of course, yeah. So I guess my journey is as vanilla as they come. I just started off from a young age being very interested in computers. There were quite a few around when I was younger, and I did go into university with the intent of going into computer science. I actually ended up studying networking and infrastructure and networks, but at the end of the day, software just was my calling. So after university, I started off as a junior dev and have been working up the scale ever since to be where I am here today.
We do have with us as well the wonderful Harini, who I've been so blessed to have worked with. She's the solutions architect over at Temenos. She was previously as part of our engineering team. So happy to have you as part of our panel. Share with everyone your story, how you got into engineering and tech.
Yeah, likewise. I'm so happy to be part of this event. And yeah, of course, I will tell how I landed in the engineering. So as Mike said, I was so interested from schooling that computer science is my destination. So school, undergraduation and post-graduation, everything is into computers. So yeah, eventually I landed into the IT sector. And when I started, yes, I started as just a junior developer. After that, I owned different flavors of roles, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it till now, and even I foresee that I will be enjoying in technology. Lot to learn, yeah.
We do have as well Brian from Trybooking with us today. So Brian, you are on mute, but when you're ready, feel free to tell us how you got into this field, a little bit more about you up to this point in your career.
Sure. So my father was an engineer and saw the value in the future of IT, and so there was always computers in our house. I guess I got quite interested in both electronics and computing from quite a young age. I went to university. I did a multimedia degree, which was more IT than it sounds, at Swinburne, but actually hated programming, ironically. But I landed a job that wanted me to do a little bit of programming, and I just got really into it. And I've been in, I guess, SaaS-based web development ever since, and never really looked back. So it's always amusing to me that I actually hated what I now do at uni.
For anyone who is tuning in who's not in engineering or IT, just keep in mind there are so many jobs like project management, operations. There are so many different other fields that you can get into. In fact, the person up next, Anthony, he is a chief operations officer, so less on the tools in terms of actual tech. So, but just remember, everyone, that this is the future. We have Anthony. He's part of H2X Global. incredible, who do some amazing like hydrogen cell fuel vehicles, which are, it's incredible. They're based here in Australia. Some of their vehicles are even manufactured here in Australia. They're electric trucks, so check them out. But we have Ant. Do you want to tell us a bit about how you got into what you do and what you studied?
Excellent, thanks, Jess. And I loved how you qualified that there was the non-technical people in the room today as well. And that's how I started a lot of the conversations. Is, hey, I'm not the technical one, but hey, look, I've given that one away a long time ago. My way of getting into the tech field was actually through sales, account management, and then moving into coordination of projects as well. And to Jess's point, that is an emerging area that I think people sometimes stumble into, and realizing that it's not actually what you study, but it's what are those emerging competencies. And I think that's some of the things that we'll be looking at today. For me, it started in telecoms and looking at digital mapping and the early days of telemetry, where it was very sci-fi back in the 1990s about cars driving themselves, of looking at digital maps that you'd put into a car. What are they called today? We all know, right? So it's amazing how some of these emerging fantasy ideas become reality, and very quickly, and very pleased to join you all today.
If each of you could just tell me, what do you think is kind of more important? Do you think it's experience, or do you think it's education?
I think it's both. I think at various stages, my focus has been on education. So certainly, obviously, doing my undergraduate degree before I got my first full-time role. But then I went back in the early 2000s and did my MBA. And that was really beneficial for me as I'd moved into an executive role, and I actually found that I really didn't understand like how do marketing people work, and what do sales guys do, and how does operations go, and all of the other sort of functions that are within an organisation. I really didn't have a clear understanding of them. So my MBA certainly gave me that understanding of this is how marketing works, and the 4 Ps and all that sort of stuff. But the other thing that it certainly did do to me is it gave me the confidence in my own ability that I could really turn my hand to anything that I really wanted to do. So that was a sort of confidence thing for me. But certainly in my role as at an executive level, experience is critical.
What do you think was the secret sauce? Because I'm sure a lot of students tuning in that maybe want to one day be a CIO or a CTO.
For me, it's a realization that technology is an enabler. It's not an end to itself. And typically IT people look at, say, doing a project and go, well, the project's finished when that new system goes live. For the business, the project's just starting then, because they're just starting to use it. So it's focusing on rather than the implementation date, it's actually focusing on the outcome. What's the outcome that we're trying to achieve for the business, rather than focusing on the technology? And I think in terms of my interviews, my CV, my LinkedIn profile and that sort of stuff, that was very deliberately trying to set me apart, to go, hey, this guy's a bit different. He's not focused on the technology business.
Oh, I mean, we work with, that's exactly what we do. We help people. We do professional resume writing, their LinkedIn, their cover letters, interview training. It's so important. I honestly believe that it kind of is that one thing that a lot of people forget about. So I just find it crazy to me that people don't actually spend money on that, which is the most important thing.
In my case, it's been pretty much 90% experience that got me where I am today.
Yeah.
Not discredited education though by any measure. You definitely need education to get started. I just have to say that there are so many different ways to do it nowadays. It doesn't have to be a degree. It can be online. You can get courses for paid or for free. YouTube is full of material. We're very lucky to be in a business where the material is so freely used and distributed, unlike other professions. So I would definitely urge everybody to get their hands dirty with some courses and/or obviously official degrees. But at the end of the day, I think unless you actually start to work in a team and start to work on projects that require multiple people, multiple inputs, they actually have the actual challenges. No tutorial will ever get you anywhere close to what it is to work on a live projects.
And in fact, on that, we do have our practical internships and experience programs. Harini actually did one through us and ended up, because it can be really difficult for those who particularly come from overseas, try to break out into the tech field, and, it can be really, really hard.
So on the topic of education or experience, so education will tell you what it is, but experience will make hands-on, and you will get to know. So coming to the experience, my personal experience, like when I came to Australia, I nearly had 10 years of experience. I think I did a catch-up with Jess one fine morning, and it was just 15-20 minutes. It was around a month or two. I got to know like what is the technology front Reesby is expecting, and how I can help in building something in the technology projects which Reesby was having it. And yes, I turned that into a job, and I made really a good friends and good professional networks. So that's something I feel it's so important. Even though we have experience, we have to use some different strategies in order to land in a job.
We have a question from Barbie. We've got a lot of questions in the comments, so keep them coming. We'll be highlighting them. But she's saying, she or he's saying, transition being a physical therapist to IT, completing a boot camp, a coding boot camp in November. So what do you think about things like the short courses, coding boot camps, this kind of thing? I personally love it, but what's your opinion on those, do you think?
Yeah, so I have a lot of respect for people that are coming from other industries. I think it's incredibly valuable in IT to get some diversity of background and experience. There's nothing like somebody who actually knows a bit about some other areas of the world to draw on that experience as they work in teams. I think to get some experience, it's a bit tricky straight out of a boot camp, but I do think that actually spending some time working on something, whether it be an open source project or some kind of pet project for yourself that you can actually demonstrate and show and get working end to end, is an incredibly valuable way of being able to demonstrate your skills as it comes to a resume process. But one thing's for sure is that technology will keep changing. And so your ability to learn and adapt to new things is just absolutely critical.
Constantly upskill. It's never too late to learn something new. Anyone who's tuning in, if you don't know, like we're not affiliated with them, but there's like Udemy, Teachable. Check it out. There's so much free content that you can just like enroll yourself. You can do it even when you're in a job.
Learn how to learn, right? Because that will keep you relevant. The technologies will change, the knowledge will change. And what I share, and I think part of when we onboard people into H2X Global as well, is looking at how to experience education globally. First of all, we're a global brand. We have teams in Asia, we have teams in Europe. And what we're looking at, and one of the things that often happen is you may start in a career, and then because you're good at what you do, you're asked to be mobile and go into different countries, work with different teams. It's one of the biggest areas of failure because people haven't developed those skill sets. And especially when we're looking at our organization, which is an automotive industry company, there's skill sets that have to be there. It's a mandatory skill set for compliance and to make sure the technologies work. But to make sure the company works and that the people all come together, I think that's the experience. So definitely a combination of both, Jess.
What do you think are the hot skills that people should be looking at the moment, whether it's tech, non-tech? What do you think?
AI is, without a doubt, AI is underpinning a lot of the business process automation that is occurring throughout business now, which is a whole part of digital transformation. To give an example of that, the water supply network into Melbourne is now fully automated. AI, without a doubt, will become increasingly pervasive, not just in IT, right across enterprises and organisations. Another really hot topic is certainly around cybersecurity. So we now live in a much heightened threat environment. To give you an example of that, at Melbourne Water, we get about 60,000 attacks a month from all sorts of different organisations, and we block about 90 to 95% of the email that's sent to Melbourne Water. Cybersecurity is much broader than just IT. It's about awareness and education of all your employees and your contractors, you know, how to recognise a phishing email, don't click on the link. It's about uplifting the digital capability of our workforce, which is working with HR or people in capability about what are the digital skill sets that we need into the future. Other areas, all the traditional areas will continue on, I think, around, you know, the IT operations, although that's increasingly outsourced. So if people are interested in a career in IT operations, I would suggest that they look to go to like a managed services provider. I'm a great believer that you should never outsource strategy or architecture, so because that's really controlling your future and your destiny, and you want to be in control of that across the organisation. So I think that those roles will continue. The other area that's really hot at the moment is what we call UX/DX, or user experience, design experience. So that is having specialists who design the interface between the system and the user.
It's all about IoT. If you don't know what IoT is, I really encourage you all to get onto the internet and start Googling it. It's referring to the Internet of Things. So basically, this is just where sensors could be placed in devices. Eventually, we will have smart cities, I believe. We're going to see mass exodus, just like we did back in the day of like the Roman Empire type times, you know, where people just picked up and left cities because they're outdated. I believe we're going to have a lot of smart cities. If you look at what's going on in Japan, there's a smart city project happening near Mount Fuji, and that's where cybersecurity is even more important, because you have so many different endpoints. You have even, you know, AI on the edge on some of these devices and chips that are, you know, laying around. And so what if someone is able to physically access those devices, manipulate the data to tell you that the water's clean when, for example, it's toxic, as an example, right? That could be what we call, like, you know, cyber terrorism.
As you just mentioned, we are connecting more and more things onto the internet. Unfortunately, security sometimes, or if not most of the time, is an afterthought, and hence a lot of people are realizing now that it shouldn't be. And there's a big push for cybersecurity. Machine learning is starting to back up everything when it comes to business processes, business. I want to say business automation, any sector you can think of where some sort of big sets of data can actually help a machine automate anything. You can think of that it would be a good application for machine learning. And a lot of companies are kind of finding these things now. A lot of companies, by definition, are collecting massive amounts of data just by existing. And they are starting to use that data. And machine learning is one of the best applications of it. All of these are skills like data engineers and data scientists that are very, very important. Again, they're going to be as important as any other tech role very, very soon.
We developed, and that's what we've been working on for the past year, was AI auto matching candidate jobs sort of platform, which is called Moula AI. It's a major sponsor for this event, and we're so proud, like in a year, how far it's able to been able to come, and then the volumes of data that it needs to process, and you need to clean everything first before you get anything happening. So I 100% agree.
So when we are welcoming the digital space, like all these components like AI, machine learning, data, and another one component is like everything as a service. To be good in the market, I would say like try to have knowledge on everything, but definitely master one of the technology which you need to find it interesting. Absolutely, like data is one of the biggest future, and another one is the cryptocurrencies, stocks, blockchain kind of stocks. That's the next like when all these things, like when the robot is get it rolling in the world, and when we try to do a space tourism, and when we all go into digital, then I'm sure that many of the financial institution will think of coming up to the cryptocurrency and doing some regulation changes. So not sure, but that's also one of the space which we need to look into it.
You want to have an understanding of all these different things, hardware, software, sort of the firmware side, but also you know, physical places and spaces that will become more important, like you said. And obviously aerospace engineering will be another hot one too, as we're starting to, this becomes much, much bigger. But is there anything that you'd suggest in terms of some small skirts that people could get under their belt, or behavioural skills they could develop moving forward?
I think more than having little certifications like that might be absolutely required for some roles and jobs, I think having passion and willingness to learn is you know, far more useful than having a piece of paper. Just in my experience, even just recently, I've had people that have worked for us that have had lots and lots of certifications, but actually couldn't contribute to the team and build things because they just didn't understand enough about the big picture, the underlying blockchain technology. I think that's going to have a huge impact on transparency of technology, and you know, even things like vaccine passports you might find actually end up in some kind of blockchain technology, distributed computing, so that everybody can actually validate whether people have been vaccinated or not.
We implemented blockchain into our Moula AI platform, so we can do verified references, you know, and education to make sure these people, because sometimes that's a hard thing when we're going through profiles in HR, right, to make sure they are who they say they are, they studied where they say they studied, and that the reference is like legit. It's Javni, she's mentioned there, she's a recent IT grad and she just wanted some tips. So one little thing I'll say is learn a little bit of the machine learning AI stuff if you can. Understand as well AWS, Amazon, or Azure as well. What skills would you say someone could get that might really advance them, set them apart from other students that are applying for jobs now?
First of all, I think, as you know, we have our students and grads listening into this, I'd invite you to step back and visualize 2030. Having lived in Japan for over 18 years and the example of the smart cities as well, what are we moving towards? How could a company such as H2X Global get involved in the automotive industry? Part of this is looking at what those emerging technologies are and looking at how, and I think it was Mike was mentioning around machine learning and the business automation as well. Massive amounts of people to actually build the cars, to build the engines. Thanks to technology and thanks to the applications of engineering, we've been able to do that on a far more smaller footprint, and to doing that smart. Part of that looking to 2030 is, I would say, anything to do with sustainability, anything that's looking at supply and value chain. If there's something that we've learned over the pandemic, is many multinationals had their value chain or their supply disrupted. We're looking at what are some of those things to do with recycling. Sustainability is not just how we produce the car, it's how we make sure refueling happens as well. So from an IT and engineering perspective, being involved in some of those emerging technologies, which are extremely exciting. It is going to be challenging as some of the others have said as well, Brian, I think mentioned as well. There may not be the certifications, but getting involved in some of these projects while you're still at university, getting involved in robotics competitions, coming into companies such as H2X Global, when we put out those intern projects, these are the things that are going to start to get you into the right network of people. What's your passion? What makes you want to work in an industry, or what is it that you want to do?
So try and mix your passion with what you're actually good at, because you can be a world famous sort of hairdresser with no qualifications, right? But if you've got all the certificates on the wall, but you still can't cut hair, you will have no customers. You need to kind of have a skill that's going to add value, and then people will want to pay you for that skill. And I think that practical integration, you know, is really important. So doing an internship, when you're hiring or interviewing a candidate, what kind of tip or trick could you give a young person when they're going for an interview?
I certainly look for passion in candidates to come into the organisation. I highly, highly recommend that undergraduates actually, as they go for interviews, as soon as they can, coming out of the interview, write down as many of the interview questions as they can remember as possible. And then outside of the pressure of the actual interview, go and write a 2 to 3 minute narrative, which would be your perfect answer to that. and then get another graduate and just mock interview each other until you've got those questions and answers absolutely down pat. You've actually looked at the website, you understand the organisation's purpose and its values and its vision, and you know, in your answer you can demonstrate how they align pretty well with yours. Don't take any longer than 2 to 3 minutes to answer a question.
Honestly, get yourself some interview training. So I really mean it, students. Treat your jobs like that. Can I be Mary Kondo? Can I say, if the job doesn't spark joy, don't apply. It's not just about them wanting you. You've got to want it as well, right? That's what an interview is there for.
Don't lose faith. My point is, when, you know, if something doesn't go very well the first few times, if you don't know something, especially for graduates, we know if you're new to a job, you know the industry, we expect to not have a lot of experience, if any, and we expect to teach you pretty much everything you need to know in order to do that job. So feel free to be confident about things you know, but also be very honest about the things you don't.
You have to believe in yourself, and you have to have a mindset that you will get the job. In the interview, you have to be genuine. You cannot beating around the bush, and don't give some irrelevant answers, because the interviewer will definitely understand that.
Be yourself, you know, be the reserved, more quiet version of you, if that's who you are, and just be confident in that quiet confidence. So, you know, just answer the questions and steer towards technology. If you're very nervous, just give the techie answers.
Customize your cover letter. Spend some time on the website. If they're an online product, spend some time trying to use it. Critically important to be willing to say, I don't know the answer. And if you are going for a techie job, use that as an opportunity that you can learn, right? Have some questions that you want to ask about the organization prepared, to demonstrate that you're actually interested in the role and you want to learn about what to expect when you get into that role.
And Kelly, awesome that you're tuning in. She's asked the question around like how to make the most out of your memberships with like ACS and IEEE. And I think that all comes down to like be involved in some extracurricular activities. And remember, the interview is an opportunity for you to build a network too. So keep that in mind, right? Like build that relationship. So we only have time to finish off with our very final remark, Hans, on this.
Breathe. Make sure you breathe, right? I think this is one of the things you get into this kind of like hyperventilating stage, and sometimes I think, do I have to do CPR? Like, you know, it's about being present, and make sure you check your technology. More and more, we're doing the kind of interviews online. Make sure you've got a full battery. Enjoy the process.
Yeah. And the tech is so important. So be careful with like Bluetooth headphones. Check your Wi-Fi and internet connection. We're going to go into all sorts of interview tips. I want to thank every single person up on this stage. So everyone in the audience, I hope you're all giving a huge round of applause, and drop in your resume, reesby.com.au/channel, because then we can pass it on to some of those who have grant programs and who are doing some grant hiring. Thank you, everyone.